Good morning, everyone, and thank you for your time today. I'm happy to welcome you to today's ACMA webinar. Our topic is building successful KOL networks. This is part of our ongoing research and presentations on maximizing the value of medical affairs activities and communicating that value to all of your stakeholders, both internal and external to the company. I want to take a moment and discuss the ACMA's role in advocating for medical affairs. Most of you who are familiar with the ACMA know us from our work in building the world's first and only accredited certification program for medical affairs professionals. Over the last 5 years, we've worked with thousands of professionals in over 50 countries to certify their medical affairs skills. We've worked to set the global standard for medical affairs skills and professional ethics. From that work, we came to understand that medical affairs teams really need their own tools dedicated to medical affairs work and not just adapted from other functions tools. ACMA Engage is one of our, ACMA Engage is our new medical affairs CRM platform. Engage was built from the ground up for medical affairs. It's easy to use, easy to administer, and it really reflects the workflows of field medical information, medical communications, medical affairs management, and other sub-functions. ACMA Predict is our predictive analytics platform, and this system uses our proprietary machine learning system to go beyond sentiment analysis, and instead it really gives you actionable predictions of your key opinion leaders' future needs and preferences. Engage and Predict are two parts of our growing suite of medical affairs services. If you're interested, please be in touch after the webinar. With that, I want to welcome today's webinar speaker. Jim Holmes is a highly experienced professional. He's worked in medical affairs, KOL development, strategic planning, and medical communications. His experience spans both commercial and medical sides of the pharmaceutical as well as medical device industries. He has excelled and worked extensively in sales, training, communications, clinical, medical, and managerial roles in both the US and global markets. He's a proven leader over both commercial and medical teams, helping them to grow and develop both business success and their personal capabilities. His specialty is in the strategic visioning, aligning, and executing of collaborative partnerships to build networks which support both development and commercial visions. Jim's a graduate of the Albany College of Pharmacy and currently lives in the greater Boston area. And with that, welcome Jim Holmes.
Great, Adam. Thank you very much. I can take control and share my screen here. Excellent. Is that coming through okay?
Looks great.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you for everybody for giving me a little bit of time of your day. I say good day because I'm not sure that whatever time zone you might be in, that'll cover everything. But I want to talk a little bit about that building a successful KOL network that we have and the components that go into building that network. We'll cover a little bit on the rationale for why we want to have that network, build it, a little bit of the process that goes into it based on some of the experience from things that I've gone through, having been through this rodeo a few times, and things that I've learned and experienced over the years. And then how do we measure success and look to carry it into the future? So hopefully it'll be helpful. If you have questions, I know the chat function is open. We can, and I'd be happy to answer all questions as we move forward. Now, if I can just get, there it is. Of course, the obligatory disclaimer, and these are the opinions of the presenter, of myself, and not of Alexion, my employer. So the first question you really have to ask yourself in embarking on a KOL networking or a KOL project is, what's the goal? Why are we doing this? So some of those factors that we're looking at may be external. If we're looking at how we're going to have KOL expertise represented in the outside world. Internal, how are we going to continue use those KOLs and the insights and things we may pull internally, or down the road we may need some support and some advocacy and someone to be able to stand up and be that expert for us. Some of those examples are, if it's an educational component, that's going to be to an external audience that we're working with, or being a clinical expert in that disease area, whatever it may be, in providing guidance to us on an internal function. Sometimes we have to gather insights to drive decision-making that we're going to make either in building our strategy for an upcoming year or in a clinical development program or a trial design. We've got to know what are clinicians facing out there on the front lines in day-to-day to really see and help guide, make sure we're going to design a trial that's going to be able to be utilized in publication and really move the bar forward once that trial is complete and published. Obviously, a KOL is to be a potential speaker, and we want someone to be online to be able to share their expertise, their understanding of the disease area, and how emerging treatments are going to fit into that. Obviously, for a peer-to-peer basis that we have, we want to build supporters of what we're moving forward. And when we get into research, that goes into, again, the trial design, but also trial sites, KOLs that are going to be willing to help with you, work with you, and help enroll patients from clinical trials. As we get closer with those, we always need support and advocacy with someone going to regulatory to be the clinical expert, to stand there for us and be able to defend the disease state and the rationale for why we're coming into this disease space. And always a spokesperson. That person has to be online and know the vision for where the organization is heading. Not only have the disease expertise, but be able to frame it in the scope of what that vision is for where you're headed to be. They're going to sometimes potentially have to answer media questions that they may go back with at a Congress to be an expert. You really want them to be really fluent in where you're going and what the direction is. And obviously with payer presentations, that is going to come into effect as well. So the next thing you have to look at is from an impact standpoint of developing those deep KOL relations. You've got to really look down that path or that roadway that you're heading down and ask guidance for where are we going. We've got some great ideas from clinical development that we're moving forward and developing our path forward. We got to pressure test that every once in a while. And sometimes, as I said, based on treatment patterns, other emerging data that we look at, we've got to look and help guide and set that path that we're going on. Once we decide on that path and we move a little forward, it's got to be about gauging the progress. So as we reach steps, milestones in the development, going from phase 1, 2, and planning our path forward, we need to be able to gauge how are we doing? What changes do we make? Do we need to tweak that plan, utilizing the expertise, guidance, and as I said, that emerging landscape that we're looking at. Always building support. When we're bringing the KOLs and really sharing that collaborated vision that we're building in that direction, you want to be able to have that support. Now, sometimes that support in developing the landscape that we're in, they don't always necessarily have to agree with us, but they need to be able to build a trusting, supporting relationship so that they're able to give us really unfiltered advice so that we can build the best plan and the best path going forward in development. And always testing our position. As we continue to move forward, we move through the late stages of development and hopefully go toward approval and marketing of a product. We want to be testing our position along the way, make sure it resonates, and we can get clear, honest feedback to if that position is going to resonate with their peers and hit the rest of the disease space. And as the data emerges, the good news, study gets published, we have that data coming. Hopefully it's, we'd love to say it's New England Journal of Medicine and we're at, the biggest Congress we have of the year. Who's going to give the podium presentation? Have they been along the way from setting the course that we're going to go on in the beginning of this journey and on this road to helping us gauge it along the way, getting on those test positions? Because when they're up there in front of their peers, standing at the podium and giving a presentation about the data, about a study that they might have been involved in, a company-sponsored trial, or it could have been an IST or whatever you call your investigator trials, you want to make sure that they're aligned and they know the vision, as I said, and the direction that you're headed in. Because if they're standing up there on the podium in front of 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 of their peers and they're up there and they get the data wrong, or they're completely not aligned with your position, that's not where we want to be. Pretty uncomfortable place, and I don't think any of us wants to be in that position. So let's talk a little bit about the process of starting that network. Where do you begin? So the thing that I've found through my experience, and I've been through this in a few different organizations, is you start with an identification project. And there's different parts of that we really need to get into. It has to be an objective search that we look at based on very selected criteria. So we can really rank who's going to be the mover, the shaker, the influencer within the medical community, and what is their expertise and specialty and the priorities of that project that you're looking for. So we're going to talk a little bit about each one of these. I would want to also make sure that you've got to, you've got to select some potential vendors that you can use for an identification project. Now, I've worked before and done this with OpenQ in a couple of instances. Currently working with Steep Rock that we're working with, and the new, as Adam talked about, the ACMA Engage. I believe that's a function that they have within their new system as well. Now, I have not had experience, but in Googling and using our friend to look at those, I have found some other companies as well. But you really need to find a partner that you can work with. So let's talk a little bit about that objective search piece that we want to have. You've got to, what this is based on selected criteria that you really want to work on and be able to develop those. And it's not just what we used to call the old friends network. It's not like the Sprint network back in the day, and you're just calling on a friend and a friend and a friend. And I've seen that happen over and over. In the early stages of phase 1 development, we tend to commonly go to our people that we know will produce and know will be able to get patients and start in a phase 1 setting to get us some data and do it on a rapid basis so we can progress quickly. But sometimes those are not the people who are going to take into phase 2, into phase 3, and really be the experts and those thought leaders that the rest of the medical community listens to. So it's really looking at those criteria that we want to develop those on. And when we set the criteria, those are based on how are we going to then utilize the data and utilize the expertise of those clinicians. So what we can do with one of these, with the ID project and the search, is identify the search terms that they want to put in. And as you're working with the vendor to do it, you can look at clinical trials, publications, and abstracts. And when you get to publications, as I alluded to a little bit earlier, there's different ranks of publications. Not all journals are rated equal. So you can provide scaling if you want. And someone who is first author in a New England Journal of Medicine article, probably that is going to hold a little bit more credit than something in Medical Times or something like that, or something that's what we can call just a common journal that you're going to see. So if we also look at presentations, have they been accepted by their peers to give presentations and had their work accepted to present? If they're a Congress chair, if they're a chair of a session at one of our major Congresses, they've obviously already been accepted by their peers to be a thought leader, to be respected. These are those kinds of influence, or they already have a built-in network of people that you want to look to. Research groups that we have, and cooperative groups to build with. That's going to again give credibility to their position and what they say, and they're going to have the pulse because of their interaction with the research group of what's really going on in the real world. Other ones that you can look at is review committees and guidelines. Some of these are a little bit tougher to find when they're doing the search to find out what committees and guidelines that they've been on creating and publish those, or textbooks, CME presentations that they're giving. Are they out there? Are people listening to what they're saying, and are they reviewed as an expert in the particular therapeutic area that they're discussing? Now with the Sunshine Act, and we can have a little bit more vision and clarity to who's on advisory boards and speakers bureaus and that. So you not only know that, yes, they're doing it, yes, they're out there, they're used to providing influence, or not influence, they're used to providing, advice, insights, guidance, but you also have an idea for who they're working with as well, which is also pretty helpful. The nice thing with these reports is you then have to match the priorities, because the report coming out of one of these KOL ID projects, I've literally had the spreadsheet that comes out with 10,000 names on it. And based on those criteria, and everybody gets points, and they're ranked for who's going to be the quote unquote most important or most influential in that area. But you can give different weights to those. That's the nice thing. We've advanced where you can give different weights. As I said, not all publications are the same. Or if someone is a Congress chair, you can give that a little bit more weight to match the priority that you're looking for. And your priority, when you're giving those percentages, that may change depending on the project that you're looking at. If you're looking early to design a clinical trial, that's one type of thing. And you can change the weightings to get really a rank that you want based on those objective criteria that you look at. And that may be very different from someone if you're looking for an advisory board, if you're looking for potential speakers or media opportunities or something like that. So a lot of things go into it, whether it's the design of a clinical trial, it's kind of a think tank and deciding on vision and strategy. If it's testing your focus, you have to throw in the aspect of what's your audience? Is it global? Is it regional? And that weighting may play in, because that's going to grow into all of these pieces and that criteria and what you can assign those percentages and weighting to. As I said, it's going to help you build the support and look for who people are working with and how they're influencing other clinicians, and you'll see trends built right in there. And when we're trying to decide our progress and where we're going, if you're looking to match that priority, you can tell who's going to be able to give you that guidance and be able to gather that information. So once you have that monster-sized spreadsheet, you can pull in the ratings, give them based on whatever project that you're particularly looking for, and you can select and filter and really narrow down a smaller list of those KOLs prioritized based on all those objective weightings, and you can really get a close list of who you want to identify and try and work with. Some of the pros and cons that we look at to go through. On the pro side, as I mentioned, the huge list of my experience I've had, you get a list of an enormous amount of people. As I said, it was 10,000 people long, but it's based on all that objective list in the database, all the criteria that you get to work with a vendor and select those and be able to narrow down based on that project what it's going to be, rank it by importance, and give each thing give it a higher weighting. If that session chair at a Congress needs more, and as opposed to 1 point, give it 5 points, give it 10 points. If that's really the priority and the type of person that you want to get, that you're looking for the particular project, and then the shuffle will occur in the ranking that you work with. So it's going to be completely sortable. As I said, if you want to look at this from a global perspective, could be country, could be regional. You may want a key to sort and give the right criteria of someone who's going to give guideline perspective, who happens to live in the southwestern part of the United States. You can plug all those in and sort those and narrow them down and get a very narrowed focused list for who you're looking at. And a lot of times it's going to give people who are outside of that, air quote here, friends network that we used to be able to use, because they've done the publications, they've done the work, and a lot of this stuff are people you might not pick up, so you might find some hidden gems within there. But again, the pro is that it's flexible to meet your needs, and it really does is find those gems and really broadens your vision for who is really out there producing data and providing influence within the space. Now, if we look at the cons, number one is the same. It's a huge list. You've got to comb through that. That's obviously a pro and a con. You can't be swayed on a list of 10,000 people to look at. Really the meat that you want, if you've got your criteria set right, if you've got your weighting set right, you want to look at the top 20 to 25 people that are in that list. That's going to be your sweet spot that you really want to go in. If you want to move and find some and broaden it, you dig a little bit deeper into the list. But really selecting those criteria are going to help you get away, are going to help you control that. The thing of doing the objective search is it can be slightly dated, so you have to take a little bit of grain of salt with that. And by what I mean by that, this is publicly available data. So when the studies are published, when they come out, that you're getting this. So if someone's brand new coming out, that's the rising star that I kind of allude to, that you have to understand that it's not going to be 100% collect everything. That's the science that gets into it. That's the magic of getting out in their field and talking with people for who's doing the influence. That's where you're going to find the rising stars and the people who are going to be on this ranked list. They're just not there yet. But you absolutely want to start interacting and building those relationships now. There can be a little bit of a legacy factor. If you've got the global thought leader who's in all the publications, last author and for senior author on a lot of publications, they are going to rank up toward the top. Now, sometimes you're going to get them when they're heading into retirement, and you realize, yes, they still handle or carry an enormous amount of clout within the medical community, and to look at their influence over that. But then you have to pressure test it and go back with, what's my objective? What's my project that I'm working on? Is that the right person? Or do I want to start to dig to the next level and dig down a little bit lower into that list? But the data, as you go down the list, pretty much any of the vendors you're going to work with, they will comb through the data, and then they'll call and they'll research and double check and completely verify the top people in the list. But the data gets a little bit loose when you get down toward the lower parts of the list, unless you want to pay to have, different how you go into how many people do you want to pay for them to go back and verify is at the top 75, 100, 150 that you can go. They can go as deep as you want. It's just how much you want to pay to be able to pay for the project. Some of the challenges in doing the project, as I alluded to, it can be an overload of data. Some people look at this, the project and all the data that comes in like, oh my God, I don't know what to do next. So you just need to be able to filter through it, prioritize, and again, look at the top. Look at that top tier, that top 25 or 30 that you may have to go through. That's going to be your sweet spot that you want to go with. I mentioned the rising stars. That's the art of medical affairs to really get out there and identify those people, the up-and-comers, studying under one of your top people who are then going to go to another institution and lead a program and really develop their career. Knowing them early is a great thing, and that's where we want to build those relationships. Continuing to balance all those relations, as I said, from the senior who are heading toward retirement, and understanding how the politics works, and how things are going to shuffle as time goes on and careers advance. I mentioned the dilution of the data, but keeping current. Sometimes this data will keep you current for a while, a couple of years. You may need to run a new search every couple of years just to identify and see how some of those up and comers have made their way through. Sometimes the data is going to change, and you may catch some new people coming up and really stepping up into that influence type of environment that we want to be able to go. And oh boy, this was a huge learning, is maintaining list integrity. The first thing I would always say is, if you develop and you do one of these projects, take your initial input, your feedback, that spreadsheet, make a copy of it, say do not touch, do not mess with this one, and move it aside somewhere and then start working on a copy of it. Because when someone gets in and starts sorting things and someone else gets a hold of your spreadsheet, all of a sudden, if there's missing cells or whatever, you're going to have addresses getting all mixed up and data getting mixed up. So you have to protect the integrity of the list. Trust me, lesson learned. We ran into a challenge with that and had to go back and get the original copy. But protect yourself. Make sure you're working off one of the originals to have. So then the question is, we've gone through a little bit of the why, the import of why we want to do this project, the rationales for it. We've gone through the process. So what do I do now? You're getting ready. You want to start building that KOL network, looking at how do we expand it? How do we broaden it? How do we start that identification project? I mentioned some of the vendors. You've got to get alignment on the need from your organization, that we want to make sure we're getting the input and we're doing this for the right reasons. We're looking at those objective reasons to look at the selected criteria so we can really focus and hone in on the list of people that we really want to be able to target and look at. You want to select a vendor you can partner with. I mentioned a few of them. As I said, I worked with OpenQ. I worked with SteepRock. The ACMA now has a program that will be able to help with this. There's other vendors there. Talk to them. Get out there and see who you can work with. You may jive with one versus another vendor, but make sure they can match with you and your organization and someone that you feel you can really partner closely with. And then you begin expanding your network. Once you've done the project, pulled the data in, you're gonna find some surprises. I know I did every single time that I went through this. You're going to find surprise names. People that you had no idea were getting the data out there, publishing data, as they sat in there to really start to get themselves in there. And you're gonna find, when you find them, it's a great way to broaden that network and look at how you can get stronger, because you're always going to have different opportunities. And the broader your network that you have, the more useful it's going to be. So when you finish there, to measure your success, it's continuing to look to how are you at expanding it globally? Have you really nailed down your intended list and target and influence that you're looking for? Are you helping getting guidance on your strategy to look at, as we're progressing, are we doing the right things? Are we getting the right insights and guidance to help us move forward? Are we getting the peer-to-peer, the influence? And when they get up in front of the podium, as I said, no one wants to be sitting in the audience when a KOL is up there, they're presenting data, and they come to present data about your particular product, and they get it completely wrong, and they state that this is where the direction the company's going in, and it's completely wrong. If that happens, that's shame on us as the medical affairs community, because we need to be out there making sure that the people that are up there have the right data. They're familiar with the direction where we're going. As I said, they don't need to necessarily agree with it, but they need to understand where we're coming from, what the stake in the sand is, and what the direction is that the company is headed in. So that's a little bit of the background of the why, that we go through a KOL process, and how to build a network. Hopefully understanding the process and some of the things that I've gone through, and learning how to do it can help make that process a little bit easier for you, and how some of those successful measures may go. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Jim, very much. Great. My first question relates to your point discussing Sunshine Act. How do you manage a global view, or what is your global strategy for managing Sunshine Act issues?
The Sunshine Act, I mean, most of the time it's not handled by us on that aspect. It kind of goes more into to the compliance side and the operation side that are handling the particulars and operations within Sunshine Act. But then from the report that the vendor can be able to pull and the publicly available information, they can get it. Now, obviously, due to privacy laws and things like that on a global scale that you deal with some countries in Europe that have regulations against that, that's one of those things. It's not a perfect science. It's a little bit of a grain of salt there. So it helps more US based, obviously, with Sunshine Act to have that. So if I'm interpreting the question correctly, and what the intention is, that how do you handle on a global basis? Obviously a little bit more different, and we can. There's some data that you can get from some countries, and the vendors can pull out on a global scale. But depending on the country, as I said, privacy acts make that sometimes challenging.
Gotcha. Understood. A question that came in by email. How do you, when you're dealing with perhaps a rare disease or an ultra rare disease, how do you, what makes that different in the setting up your KOL network compared to, say, a more general therapeutic area focus?
Particularly in the rare disease space, or in a narrower space, whatever that it may be, that's where the data is going. The data they're able to pull, obviously you're dealing with a pretty small audience to begin with, that you'll have, so you're not going to have as broad an influence. But then as you start to pull it in, and you're going to get the data on publications, on who's giving the presentations, on where that information is coming from. That's again where a little bit of the art of understanding and getting to know some of the people and asking some questions and getting some insights are going to help you narrow down that list. And then through congresses and getting to meet them and talk to them, who are the priority based on the criteria that you have. But in a rare disease space, sometimes your patient advocacy organizations as well are going to give you it's a great source of information to be able to find out who are they working with. Because when you get in rare disease, you've got such a drive to be able to help, and such a strong resource in some of the patient advocacy organizations that you can partner with. You can really help narrow down those experts in the therapeutic area. Now, depending on the area, you may have one person who is the, again, air quote here, godfather, or I use it in a godmother, if you will, of the disease space. So you got to pay the proper respect for what that is. But there's also a lot of other movers and shakers that are coming up and building their careers, building the data set, and building the data that is in there for the disease. Those are the people that we want to be able to use a project like this, and that identification project, to identify and build those relationships with early.
Gotcha. And on a somewhat related topic, how do you identify, work in non-HCP stakeholders and key opinion leaders? So I think particularly within patient advocates, but also the other stakeholders.
I haven't added, well, I can't say I haven't. I haven't added patient advocates necessarily into identification project like this. I have added in where you can take in nurse navigators or things like that, but sometimes it's based on, with the criteria search, sometimes it's based on degree, based on specialty they may have. So you'll get nurses, nurse advocators, things like that, pharmacists that may run in if they're out there publishing and getting the data out there. So you may run into those and have some of those in that particular project. So if your criteria is encompassing and brings those in, you want to be more inclusive than exclusive in your criteria. So obviously you're looking at MDs, DOs, but you bring in PharmDs, RPHs, whoever is PhDs, whoever's putting the data out there in the search criteria. Then you can, when you're filtering it and narrow it down based on those criteria, you can do the sorting and help guide you to bring some of those people in. It's a great question, because when you come to that patient advocacy piece, that's a lot harder, because there's not a lot of historical data there. Now that we're getting into some patient lay summaries and different types of publications that are bringing in the patient view and some of those pieces, there's a little bit more data there, but I'm really not sure if the ID source and project is really going to identify those at this point in time. So that's the old-fashioned kind of research of looking at some of the advocacy organizations and finding out who they're working with, talking with them to be able to identify those. It's a need. It's a huge need to be able to gather that kind of information. I don't know if we're there yet.
Gotcha. And when you're thinking about kind of phase or pre-approval, post-approval, how much does where you are in the timeline impact kind of your prioritization for KOLs?
Oh, huge impact. Because you can limit the studies, the type you look at, depending on the research. Again, you can look at, are they in early phase? Do they do just phase 1, phase 2 work? Is it someone who's doing company-sponsored trials and doing phase 3s, trial sites? Where are they in the author lineup that you look at? And you give different weightings for those. If someone's first author or last author, that obviously, that gets more weighting. That gets more credit in there. And then so that's usually first author or last author on a phase 3 that you're going to have. That's someone who's right around your approval time frame that you're looking at, because they've got the experience of taking that leap of coming in and providing well-controlled randomized trials and getting it in and really doing the hypothesis and looking for how we're developing new treatment algorithms, new pathways that we look at. That's going to be a huge driver there, and giving more weight to those. If someone is doing much more phase 1 work for what they have, or depending on where their publications are, that's depending on your priority that you have. And again, it's about the project that you're looking at. So you can give those projects more weighting that you have. You can look at different scenarios for what type of setting they were in at a Congress and where they were giving their presentation, and that you can break those down and give further weighting and further guidance. It'll help you narrow them down. Again, a lot of this, it's a guide. We pull it together. It's to help you make an educated decision, to narrow down and find some of those people. But then you got to comb through it and look at it, because you're always going to find people that are just not, they're not correct to be able to find them. They're going to sneak in there. But that's combing through it once you really give those weightings and find that targeted list.
Great. Our next question is around digital communications, but especially like you're kind of two extremes. You can have a completely customized communication plan for each KOL, or you can try to force every KOL into this kind of the same communication strategy. How do you balance those two, the need to have some standardization, but also to reflect how you're communicating with different KOLs?
It's that I'm going to go again and say that depends on your objective. It's having that balance is a critical component, and it's reaching out, and communication is always good. Building and reaching out that olive branch and having communication and having people understand where you're going in the direction, that's always good. Now, just like I mentioned, journals, and not all journals are created equal. Not all KOLs are created equal. And what type of partnership relation are you working? Are you developing? And you have to understand that whatever you're communicating, it's based on the relationship with that KOL. Now, if they're a highly respected disease expert, there's a good chance that they're working with you have to go into it expecting that they're working with other companies as well. So controlling your communication that you're giving and building that trustful, respectful relationship. But now, I'm always one, some people are uncomfortable in getting there. I think those top people that you're working with, those should be as individualized as possible. And different people have different thoughts on the process. I'm the kind of person who is a get to know them on their first name and utilize their first name as quickly as possible in an email chain that you can get there. So you're developing a personal bond that you are in that relationship, as opposed to just you don't want it to say, "Dear Dr. Smith, dear Dr. Jones," to have this, but to really develop that bond. Now, there is a place for a broader communication. And if it's a higher level, you're reaching to a broader audience, yes, that can be a digital a push to the broader audience that you may go with. But that top tier, if you're going to call them tier one, whatever you want to call them, those are ones that I would tend to pull out and separate and send out an individual one-on-one communication.
Okay. Very good. And there's kind of a follow-up question. What advice do you have for building and maintaining these relationships during the COVID era when we're close to 100% virtual?
It's definitely a different world. My success and what I've been having and dealing with the relationships is, as you've developed them. And you've developed the relationships, sometimes it's not pushing the envelope. Sometimes it's just as simple as checking in and just saying, "Hey, how you doing?" Because we have to remember, at the end of the day, these are key opinion leaders. They're incredibly important people, thought leaders, respected people in the industry, in the disease space that they're in. But by the way, they're also fathers, mothers, children. They're people. And sometimes they just need to be listened to. They need to just have someone reach out and say, "Hey, how you doing?" And it's just that simple touching base to see where it is. And it's not pressuring them. They've got a lot of, and it depends on where they are. Some clinicians now, and they're also doing things virtual. They may have a little extra time. They may have a little time to give you and spend some more time. If you've got the interesting conversation and topics to pick their brain and talk with them, and have a good intellectual conversation to have with them. But you got to weigh those out and really just look at, you have to develop that feel in that relationship for when is the right time for a check-in. When's the time to, "Hey, hope if you have a little time, I got a couple questions I need your opinion on." Everybody's happy to give you their opinion, whether they're a KOL or not.
Of course. And a follow-up question, kind of quarantine life. What's a way to, many MSLs are grounded or have very limited access right now. So they have extra time in some sense. What's a way to give them, professional development opportunities, help them broaden their skills and training to help keep them motivated?
Oh, when we look at what we're doing from a training aspect, is trying to always work on developing our competencies, developing our skills. We and I say we, this in the broader medical affairs group as a whole, the medical affairs community, we can know the data. We can know the data. We're experts and know the data inside, out, and backwards. But the thing during this time, if we have a little time, it's really develop some of the emotional intelligence, develop the ways to read a situation, to look at our questioning, to look at how we are becoming, we're able to really listen when we have that conversation engagement with a KOL, to really listen and find out what their challenges are, to listen with an empathetic ear, to seek to understand, to find out what are their challenges, and then not just jump at them with a solution, but to really develop our impactful engagement and communication standards for how we can do that. Now, there's lots of things and programs that that you can listen to go on, whether that's self-development things as in working on listening that's inside or outside the industry. There's MSL specific. ACMA offers great opportunities and education like this series to look at things through a different way. There's lots of different things out there. I've done some work with the One MSL team that comes together. Their stuff is great, and the community that they put together and the things that they offer. But it's really about developing. I don't want to sound Pollyannic here, but it's about developing yourself, and really, how do we become better communicators to do it? We can be data experts, but in the meantime, we also need to be better communicators, more empathetic communicators.
Absolutely. And I think this is definitely related. How do you build more cross-functionality into your teams to support KOL network building and maintenance? I think that's somewhat what you were saying before, but just wanted to kind of ask that explicitly.
3 ways: communication, communication, and communication. When we're to build the cross-functional, it's you have to. I kind of really tout the task force mentality. So when you're looking at your getting alignment with your cross-functional stakeholders, so whether it's the medical affairs team, training teams, scientific communications, medical information, those people all have to come together and decide, okay, here's a project that we're going for. Here's what we're looking forward and we're doing. You need to have those people aligned in, okay, what is our objective? What's our approach for how we're going to get there? You can't develop things and develop your strategy and your internal medical affairs plan in a silo. You really have to have all of those people weighing together and have a vested interest and, have a little ownership of the co-development of the process. That's what's going to help you get alignment. And then when you're looking for KOLs for how you're going to utilize them, it's going to help you pick and say, oh, okay, what is our objective for this particular training, this particular advisory board for what we want to do, the publication? Who do we want to engage with and do? If you've got, there's cross-functional communication that happens later. Cross-functional communication is not CCing everybody on an email. That doesn't get it done. It's getting them involved in the process. It's early in the process of stating, okay, here's our objective. Are we agreed on that for what we want to do? How are we going to agree the path forward and go? And then you work, everybody does their own part to pull it in and come back to that task force to pull it together. In my experience, we've had amazing success currently, and I've done that and led teams to do that in other companies as well. But unless you really have that aligned vision for where you're going, either as a therapeutic area or just on an individual project. You've got to have that alignment early to decide that, and then it's just constant communication to make sure everybody's informed.
All right, and that's great. That's spot on from our understanding. That's all the questions we received up till now. If anybody has any more questions, please feel free to hit the Q&A button. And if not, then I will thank everyone for their time, and I want to give my deepest appreciation for your time today, Jim. This has been a fantastic discussion.
No problem at all. Thank you. I'm very happy to.
Thank you, everyone, for your time. Please be safe, and we will see you for our next webinar. Thank you.